Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's session. And we had a session actually last week, but we're back again with our live session with Andra and Paramita. So, both of them are going to talk about different topics. And these are the topics we haven't covered in the past. In detail. So I would like to give it over to Andra so that she can introduce herself because she's a good friend of mine and she's amazing chapter leader as well for OWASP. So over to you, Andra.
Thank you very much, Vandana. Um, okay, I first want to take my turn this week and actually congratulate you on the board, just like Zoe did last week. Really good job. I can't wait to see what happens.
Woo! Sorry.
Thank you, Zoe. Um, okay, so and thank you for giving me the chance to speak. You will probably see that I'm not very good with speaking, so this is very good training for me. So I am one of the three chapter leaders for London, for OASP London. I became a chapter leader this year in April when one of the guys had to do his own Brexit and go to Dubai for a job. So I took Greg's place and I've been learning a lot since. I'm also currently working as an application security person in the AppSec team of WorldPay, newly WorldPay from FIS. And yeah, I chose a topic today that is not specifically technical. I know it was supposed to be on Docker security, but that will follow as soon as I understand it better myself. But I chose this topic because I have been, I'm not going to say struggling. It's been a challenge for me for the past 2 years, because in my previous role, I had to work with developers, and in my first ever role, in my first ever job, I was a developer. So I think I'm going to have to share my screen. Let me see if it works.
Sure. Let's check.
Okay,
All right. Safe, let's try.
how do you see it? Let me minimize this. Okay, perfect. Okay, so it has a very big title. Sorry about that. So this is basically a talk about a list of things that I thought of doing in order to be able to communicate with developers. Having been a developer and now on the other side of the fence and in the security area. So I, uh, okay. So I'm going to talk about how I see this communication, um, how I thought it was going to work when I first came into the security industry, um, and what the reality is. And this is because it's been a challenge ever since I started my application security role. I'm going to also talk about what can actually go wrong when this communication fails. And in my opinion, it's the source of all problems, because we always have this view of us versus them. And then I'm going to talk about this list of hacks, mostly life hacks, obviously, of ideas that I came up with in order to patch this communication and try to kind of get closer to developers and be able to do my job, because as application security, in theory, we're supposed to be an integral part of a team, a development team. Okay, so a bit about who I am. As I mentioned, I work for WorldPay. I'm one of the chapter leaders for London, and also this year in April, together with three other amazing ladies, we started something like a local chapter slash committee. We are the only physical part of WIA that has events locally in London, and we did that because we noticed that there was a lot of requests from everybody, especially from all the ladies that used to join the OWASP London chapter meetings and couldn't really communicate and network. I was also a developer, as I mentioned. I worked with Python, Java, a bit of JavaScript, and I used to be a security officer for a Dutch bank where I mostly did risk management and system classification, but I kind of also introduced some of the teams there in threat modeling, and I tried to take their processes from old security requirements and old security processes to DevSecOps. And previous to all of this, I did my master's in information and computer science at the University of Luxembourg. Um, and I was also a coach for girls in tech in Luxembourg, where I helped them with Ruby and Python. Okay, so I did this talk twice before. It was really easy because I had the audience in front of me. So this is a bit challenging. Usually I want to know if there are any developers listening, if there are any security people listening, and whether there are people that want to go into the security field. Um, but it works like this as well because I used to be a developer. I'm now in application security, and I also finished a master's in security, and I had a completely different idea of what I was going to do, especially from a research perspective. I had no idea what the industry was going to look like. So my expectation was that I would go and talk to any development team, and we become good buddies, and we talk about these security requirements, we do threat modeling, and everything would be perfect. When instead, for the past 2 years, I've noticed that the reality is mostly like this. So usually security people are the small cat, and we we are seen as compliance, audit, HR. If we ever show up at a development team's desk, they usually get very scared. Now, in order to kind of tackle this, you've got all sorts of security people, network security people that know the ins and outs of networks and how to fix issues. And then you've got the AppSec people. There are various departments here as well. But the idea is that from the security perspective, we try to talk to people and give them some funny ideas like this. So for example, if we see that developers don't really listen to us, we kind of try to speak their own language, but that usually proves to be an issue because we are not developing the code with them. And from the other side of all of this, developers are usually trying to get rid of security by saying, "Oh, but we're obfuscating things. We're encrypting this. How are you encrypting this?" Well, actually, it's not encryption. It's basically a hash of whatever we're sending, and it's fine. It's something. Just leave us alone. So what can possibly go wrong? This is a slide that I did this year in July, and at that time, the British Airways fine was actually news. It's not news anymore, and we have known about the problem with the British Airways website for a while. But that's when the fine came out. So that's one of the issues that can occur. And then later this year, we saw the fine to Marriott, to the Marriott International, for £99 million. So it's monetary loss is one of the things that can go wrong. We've also seen, ever since July, we've also seen other attacks and breaches. The European Central Bank website, which was attacked, was the website that provides the banking industry with information on how to produce statistical and supervisory reports. That website got injected with a malicious software, and it had to be taken down. And you see these kind of titles all the time in the media, but for some reason developers don't really click when they see them. This was obviously this year was obviously the year when we had the Capital One breach. So we know that this lady who worked for Amazon was able to break into a Capital One server to get access to 140,000 social security numbers, 1 million Canadian social insurance numbers, and 80,000 bank account numbers, amongst other types of information like people's names, addresses, credit limits and credit balances, and so on. So quite a big problem. And this last title is from an article that actually came out yesterday or the day before. The NCSC has apparently said that they blocked over 600 cyber attacks this year only. So the fact that these attacks are happening, it kind of tells us that we need a lot of work. There needs to be a lot of work to be done in order to protect ourselves against these breaches. And this is obviously the website that shows you all the biggest breaches of all time. Okay, so what's at stake? We're obviously and from my perspective, we are a payments company. We now joined FIS. It's an even bigger company. We care about our clients. We care about their personal data, their financial data. We work with merchants and so on. So it's really, data is incredibly important. Financial status is also, a um, main thing to take care of, and also reputation, um, as sensitive as financial status. So what do we do when that happens as security people? We tend to panic or not. It depends how you work with developers, how you work with the rest of the company. But yeah, this is the collection of life hacks that I didn't come up with these life hacks. I kind of just took all of my ideas and put them in one presentation, and I'm even currently trying to do some of these things in my current role, mainly because my current role has to do with dynamic testing, looking at static code analysis, and basically working closely with development teams in order to explain what these test results mean, how can they be fixed, why they should be fixed, and kind of get everybody to start thinking, to start having a security mindset. So this is the list. I'm obviously going to start with OWASP because I'm biased and I'm one of the chapter leaders and I love OWASP. Then I will talk a bit about the graduate slash new starters induction. That's mainly because I used to be a graduate trainee, and that was when I was technically a developer. And that's how I started to see how security works in a bigger company. I'll also go through some ideas for hackathons and TTFs, something that will happen soon for me as well in our company. Security awareness and training, and why that's a vital task for everyone in the industry. Threat modeling, and I will talk a bit about threat modeling, mainly because I love it. I have seen it in practice. I met the guy who wrote the book on threat modeling. That was, like meeting role models. It's amazing. Security testing, because I'm working with some teams on how to introduce various security tools within their pipelines and why that will help their deployments and integration. Security champions, security guilds. Obviously, these programs work in some companies, but they don't work in others. So it depends what the culture is. Then I'll go on and talk about conferences and meetups and why they're important. And as my summary slide said, I think this list is the improved one because as of August this year, I discovered something new, and that is life hacking events slash bug bounties. Okay, so by the way, I hope I haven't lost anybody. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to actually answer them afterwards as well. And I'll have my Twitter handle on the last slide. So OWASP. I think everybody on the call should know what OWASP is. These are just, this is just a small collection of projects that I chose for this slide because they are really good when trying to communicate with developers. So for example, if you want to get developers to see how to actually break a web app, you give them Security Shepherd. There are also others out there like JuiceShop. So these are purposely made vulnerable applications that you just go and you break, because that's how you learn how to break things. You also have the security knowledge framework, which has all the information on the vulnerabilities that you find in web apps. Again, all sorts of sources of information that are really helpful for technical people. We've got the Application Security Verification Standard, version 4 as of this year. The top 10 that everybody knows. Dependency Check, which is a small tool and a Jenkins plugin that can be added to a pipeline. You've got the cheat sheet series. Again, a really, really good knowledge sharing source that you can just give to developers, because these are really short pieces of information that they can use in their day-to-day development practices. And also Zap, obviously, free tool, easily integratable with the pipeline, and provides really good reports. I think the one I still haven't mentioned is AMAS. AMAS is mostly for discovering what your domains are. It's a subdomain enumeration tool, but it's really, really useful when, as a security professional, you want to see what exactly you're looking after. Oh, and Threat Dragon, of course, used for threat modeling. Okay, so for security induction, usually it's really, really useful to have an induction for whoever starts in your company, in your business, and just give them an overview of what your services are and what could happen if someone would actually try to break anything or would have any malicious intent. That's when you get all these new starters to have a new perspective on your services, but also on the security. So if you get new people talking about security, then it's even more it's even easier to actually have everybody in the company get more interested in security. Hackathons and CTFs, these are obviously the way to go if you want to do security training and awareness. I think that picture is from a hackathon that we had in the OWASP London chapter this year on the 9th of January. Really cool event. I think the company that sponsored that was Secure Code Warrior. So yeah, there are various companies that do this. They can be employed to come in and give demos or provide the platforms. Really, really useful for hands-on training, because giving developers a bunch of policy documents to read might not get them interested or want to do anything, want to have anything to do with security. Okay, threat modeling. I'll talk a bit about threat modeling because I really liked how it works. This is an example of a very funny threat model that I gave in my previous company. And this is, I think, what got developers at that point to be interested in threat modeling, mainly because I was actually kind of speaking their own language. So the geekier you make it, the better. Also, Cornucopia, I think, yeah, it's a card game that is used to help derive application security requirements during the life cycle, during the development life cycle. So combining these two can actually help to get a better view of what developers are building and how it can break. Now, I need to mention that in a threat modeling session, you don't just need developers. You need everyone from development, testing, QA, architecture, product management, project management. So you want a range of views and perspectives of everyone that has anything to do with the system, because you've got the developers who write the code and they know what they're actually writing in there. You've got testers in QA who know what to look for when they're doing their performance testing, their integration testing, unit tests, and so on. And then you've got the management side and the end user / business side who know how to use the system. So if there's something that doesn't go as well as planned, so if you have a functionality that's not really desirable or doesn't function as it should, you will have end users bypassing whatever controls you're putting in there. Okay, so an approach to threat modeling. This is from the threat modeling book. The guy I met was Adam Shostak, really cool guy. He gave the idea to start your sessions with these 4 simple questions. So first of all, you have to have all these people in a room and you talk about what exactly you're working on, what are you building. And then when you have a clear view of what's happening, so not an architecture department, because speaking from personal experience, an architecture diagram, sorry, not department, an architecture diagram does not look like reality, does not look like production. It's why you need all of these people around the table. And it's why most of the times when you have a first session in threat modeling, you see all of these people very confused with what's actually happening. And you see them discover what the system looks like and what it's doing. After you have this clear on a whiteboard or on a diagram, you can go and talk about what can go wrong. This is really fun because you've got all of these technical / non-technical people. This is when they go hands-on, and this is how you get their attention. It's really, really fun to give developers the possibility to break their own stuff, especially if you make it competitive. The third question is obviously, what are you going to do about it? This is, I think, a point where you have to talk with the team, with their sprint manager, and see which of the threats that you identified are actually important, um, and how you prioritize, how you fix things. And of course, the reiteration is number four. Um, what is important to know is that you don't just do a threat model once. So you don't stop threat modeling after you have your own one diagram. You have to go back, see if whatever you found was fixed, and then improve the threat model. Okay, so what are you working on? This is a data flow diagram example, so DFD. This is what you technically should build in theory if you get to this point with the team, when they know exactly what is happening and how each of these components communicate with each other. And there are a few components that you, as you see in the lower bit of the slide, that you can use when you're talking to them. And then how do you actually figure out what can go wrong? There are various acronyms for all of these approaches. One of them is strides. There is another one called pasta. There's another one called dread. So stride and pasta are actually frameworks for finding vulnerabilities and threats, whereas dread, I think, is a way of prioritizing your findings. So stride, first of all, it stands for spoofing, tampering, repudiation, um, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privilege. What is spoofing? Spoofing is basically pretending to be someone else. So the property that this threat is violating is that of authentication. Oh, and by the way, I kind of stole the slides from one of Adam Shostak's online presentations because obviously Star Wars. So again, as a security professional, you need to kind of communicate with developers by speaking their language. Star Wars is one of their languages, along with C and Java and everything else. So tampering is the second type of threat. Tampering is basically changing data or code, and the property it violates is integrity. You've got repudiation, when someone says they didn't do something they did, and the property is non-repudiation. So this is basically someone saying, oh, but I haven't sent that email. You need to be able, as an application, you need to have mechanisms in there that can prove who did what. Information disclosure. This is basically leakage of sensitive information to whoever should not see it. And the confidentiality is the property that's being violated there. Oh, and by the way, this is the impact according to Star Wars. You show them plans for the Death Star, and then they go and attack it. Denial of service. This is the non-availability or degradation of your service. So we've seen a lot of DDoS attacks on various companies. The property violated is availability, and you also have elevation of privilege. So these are not the droids you're looking for. And obviously, this is the ability to perform unauthorized actions in a system, and authorization is your property. Okay, this is just a bit of a summary for all of that. Now I'm going to go on and talk about security testing. This is obviously because, as I mentioned, I'm working with developers and I'm trying to make them understand why any type of security testing is okay to begin with, but then you have different security testing tasks at different times in the security lifecycle, in the development lifecycle. So first of all, for developers, you can get them talking about things like static code analysis or dynamic testing. Static code analysis is basically comprised of tools looking at the code and trying to find issues with the code. So these are based on either threat models or best practices, and they can detect if anything is wrong in the code. Dynamic testing is testing an application while it's running. So tools like Zap and Burp can do that. And then you've got bug bounty programs, which I'm also going to talk about a bit later. These are basically hands-on hackathons, kind of. So if you get developers to do these things, or if you kind of organize events internally in your companies and you get them to try and break things based on all that knowledge from OWASP, they should technically be able to find some interesting bugs in their own code. And then you've got testing for security. So there should be QA security testers somehow. That would be an ideal situation. You don't just have QA for quality assurance, you actually have people that write security tests, unit tests, integration tests for security. And then another type of security team is that of red and blue teams slash purple teams. So these are the guys that actively try to break a company's systems, and then you've got the blue teams trying to defend against the red teams. Okay, security champions and security guilds. This is basically, I think, so one of the other WIA ladies also used this pyramids picture in her talk, mainly because the idea of security champions is, as application security, there's 3 of us in the London office. We can't possibly go and talk to all of the developers, each of the developers in turn, explain why security is cool and important. So you need anybody in the business that's interested in security to become a security champion. That way, they can propagate the knowledge and they can help. So how can you help? If you want people to actually join the security champions program, you can get them to do lightning talks, so 10-15 minute talks over lunch. You can have actually lunch and learns with pizza and drinks. Developers will also always go for pizza. So the idea is make it interesting and get people to be part of your security champions program or guild, so that they get more training, so that you have different levels of security champions. You can actually have that. And then that's how you propagate the knowledge throughout the business. Conferences and meetups, this is quite general, obviously. This is a meetup, so this is great. It's what we're doing with WIA as well, and with OWASP London. And these are 3 of the Global AppSec conferences that took place this year, as well as the Open Security Summit, which was in next to London in June, I think, or July. Anyway, so I attended 3 of these events. Obviously, as a security person, it was great. It was amazing. They were 3 of the best events that I've ever been to. And this year, I've actually met the people that are my role models now. But it's not just for security people. These events are not just for security people. And the more developers or testers or security champions you get to attend these events, better. Okay, so that was kind of my original list. But I also was lucky enough at the beginning of August this year to attend something called the Life Hacking event in Vegas, which was sponsored by HackerOne. They do a lot of these things. They invite people to these, and you can see how the best hackers on this planet actually work. The H1702 was the event in Las Vegas. Then they had another one in Canada. Why is it important to get developers to do bug bounties? Well, maybe because, first of all, because they might actually get invited to these events, which are just incredible, and they get to meet the best security hackers in the world. And secondly, because you get to look as confused as I did when I was a mentee this year in Vegas, next to my mentor, one of the best hackers on the HackerOne planet. I had no idea what was happening, but still I learned an incredible amount in just 3 days of a live hacking event. These are just a few other pictures. This is when we saw this board, actually. So yeah, this is what bug bounty programs are. Okay, so that was my list. I hope it made some sense. These are some ideas that I'm actually trying to implement. Some of them I've seen in practice, some of them I'm trying out now. Yeah, thank you. And this is my Twitter handle. If anybody has any questions, anybody has any other ideas, I would love to discuss these. as this is one of the things I'm actually working in my job daily. Yeah, thank you very much. The next speaker will actually take over. Thank you.